I have a few opening remarks, and then the plan is I'm going to take you through my site map and explain where these items came from and how they came to be, and things like that. So, and I'm just going to go from a script because I'll forget half of it and I'll write it down. And I'll try to fill those shoes you just put me into. Thank you. So, thanks for attending this presentation this evening. And I'm kind of following your steps here. I like to think that when there's a function, starting tonight or in the future, when there's a function here, whether it's a marriage or a birthday party or a family special event or a bridal shower, that the James Reynolds House once again is transformed into the James Reynolds home. Because, here we have all this fellowship, we have laughter, we have food, we have warmth, and we have a common admiration for this grand old home and its property, which, in my opinion, is one of Cape's semi-hidden treasures. The Reynolds House, or tonight, the Reynolds home. So maybe we can change that, and there's been great effort to change that for months, if not years, and this certainly is a good step, and I'm honored to be the first event, which I didn't really realize that till a couple of weeks ago, so let's just really add more pressure to the kid. So maybe we can change that and elevate this place in history to the recognition it truly deserves. And of course, see Elisa, if you'd like to rent the place for functions, as I plug the company, right? And I'd also like to say, I have this in my notes, that I'd like to praise the board. I'd like to praise generous benefactors who have donated to restoring this grand old home, which we nearly lost several times, and I passed by here for years thinking, boy, I'd sure like to metal detect there sometime, but I didn't know anyone to really contact with. I had, I guess, other things to do, like take naps and things like that. So I'd like to praise the board, the volunteers for this end result. The way this home looks now, it's just really a piece of work, and this is just an amazing place. While I was setting up yesterday, I got to ride out the afternoon storm here. It was kind of neat, but I also had in mind that there's a storm cellar and I can get the padlock open. So, and the history of the home with the Reynolds family, that would be an entire, other presentation. I mean, there's just so much, but I just wanted to touch briefly, for any newcomers or people that don't know that much about the Reynolds home and house, and there's still things I'd like to grill some of you about the property as we gather more information. This passage comes from the application for the 1982 Register of Historic Places nomination form. I just lifted it right off there. It's just some brief remarks about the home. So here's just a little bit of history to kind of get us going in the mood. So, and this is right from the nomination form. For the city of Cape Girardeau, the James Reynolds House at 623 North Main is significant because it's one of the least altered dwellings built in 1857 that is reminiscent in style of French colonial architecture that was prevalent in the early years of the 19th century in the Mississippi River Valley. It was designed and built by two prominent men who did many notable projects in the area, providing quality structures, often with aesthetic merit, thereby raising the standard of living after the early settlement of Cape Girardeau. These men were Joseph Landsman, and the builder was Joseph Landsman, and Edward Branch Dean was the architect, a pioneer architect and builder in the city who did many of the prominent dwellings starting in 1839. And to get to the Reynolds family, who built it in 1857. Further local significance of the property is due to the fact that it was occupied by the James Reynolds family for 80 years, 1857 to 1937. Mr. Reynolds was a prominent flour miller after he came to Cape Girardeau in 1852, later becoming a partner in the Union Mills, which was regarded as the first of the town's leading manufacturing establishments of great importance. So just kind of a brief overview about that. Let's see.
And the mill was just right across the street, wasn't it? The mill.
The mill, there was one, yeah, there was a mill across the street, and there was one at the corner of Broadway and Water Street, and he later bought into that, and of course, keep in mind I'm going from memory at this point and giving my version of history. And that says, see page 3, okay, we're on page 3. So it's been my pleasure to be given permission to investigate the property and excavate, recover, research, conserve cultural material long lost and buried on the grounds of this property that are a direct link to the people that lived here. And they're long gone. From mid-March to October 22nd, I excavated 750 items off the grounds here. Roughly 20 to 30% of those items were pieces of broken ceramic, and for the most part of those pieces of ceramic, they were just plain white, and of course all the colored ceramic I found, which I really like finding colored ceramic, it's over in the corner. Some of this stuff I've reconstructed. I've been calling this a honey pot. All I know is if I get through the night without knocking all these bottles off, I've done a darn good job. Bull in a china shop. So this honey pot, I found the pieces scattered throughout the digs. That's one piece I reconstructed. I'm calling this a hybrid bowl. As you can see, the top sections, they truly belong in this bowl. But pieces of ceramic I found throughout the dig that didn't fit into anything else. I've just been kind of playing with it and gluing them in there. And then I started losing my symmetry, so I kind of backed off. But this summer, if I find more pieces that go to this, since this is just Elmer's glue wall, it has a good bond, but I can easily snap the pieces off and replace, whatever's there. But this is kind of fun to do. And then another couple of reconstructions there and all that. So. All the other relics dug up, like the ceramic shards, this stuff pretty much represents everyday hard living life, for survival and shelter and work and the things they used every day. And I guess in a way, it's a warm thing that suddenly all this stuff is back in the house. It's gone full circle, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? And a small part of the collection are fun things, mostly talking about the children's toys and the marbles, and the little cars and the little boat and the little top there that came out of a Cracker Jacks box in the 50s and a little melted car and a couple little figurines. And other personal items were fun to find. The comb fragments. This is kind of an ornate comb right here. It's got little flowers on it. It's just a common comb and then a little comb fragment there. But those are always fun to find. And that's directly a personal link as well as the ladies' hosiery. These are personal. Maybe they should be over here. And I can account for every one of them. But there is on a personal level, there's a bottom line thesis to the work I'm doing here. And I did a similar project at the Mark Twain Boyhood Home in Hannibal for about 8 years. And oddly enough, I found about 750 items. And this was kind of my preference for this, I guess, because I got to follow the same format I used, and they had no complaints about my work, and all that. And once again, everything I find goes back to foundation. I don't keep any of this unless maybe I find a jar of coins or something. I might hold one of those. We'll talk about that later. I've got a story about that, but I'm digressing. But there's a bottom line thesis to the work I'm doing here. For the past 10 years, I've had the experience and luck to do several other projects, and one other was a National Historic Site. That's the Mark Twain Boyhood Home in Hannibal. And also a sunken riverboat here we've been working on for about 10 years. Though I identify myself as a treasure hunter and finder for nearly 40 years, I'm trying to demonstrate, and I think I'm having success, that treasure hunters and archaeologists can get along for mutual benefit and for the common good. There's been a huge rift between archaeologists and treasure hunters that I've experienced the last 40 years, and it goes past even that, but I'm trying to show that us old diggers, us treasure hunters, we can also, step into a historic site and do a good job, as best we can, because how many archaeologists really show up here, how many archaeologists are around here and do it, just do it because they like to do it. And I'm not downing archaeologists, they have to make a living. So both sides, treasure hunters and archaeologists, they have valid arguments against each other. And so just as I did with the Mark Twain Boyhood Home with the Sunken Riverboat, I constructed a site plan, and I kept measurements, inventories, and research, and tagged and marked each item. All material goes back to the foundation, just like I did with the board at the Mark Twain Boyhood Home. And I learned archaeology on the seafloor off of Key West, Florida in 1985. We found a sunken Spanish galleon called the Atocha, and I learned my archaeology underwater. And what we did, we took land principles, and and the people that I worked for, they took land principles and applied them underwater, and we did a pretty good job on the archaeology on the Atocha. And so after that experience, I've had the bug ever since. If I'm not doing a project, I don't really feel right, or even less right. So anyway, that discovery in 1985, that experience marked my beginning as a treasure hunter, and to this day, my archaeologist friends from around the world, they're glad to answer any questions I have, or if I get hung up on something, or if there's a method I want to use, I can be right on the phone and they advise me, because we're friends and they're the type of archaeologists where they're in my camp, they're good archaeologists and they do a good archaeological job, but they're not extremists like some of the ivory tower archaeologists who would prefer that this stuff just stay in the ground and rot because they don't have the time or the attention to give to it, as well as shipwrecks. There's thousands of shipwrecks we can't even touch because of regulations. So what I'd like to do is have some other notes down here. Speaking of treasure, every time I find a mason jar, my pulse kind of quickens, because in 1912, two daughters of the Reynolds, Elizabeth and Julia, they happened to remember that Dad buried coins, jars of coins on the property during the Civil War, or pre-Civil War. There's any time you could lose your house to war or whatever. And they happened to remember in 1912 that Dad had buried those coins here. So they came back and they recovered those. And the face value of all those coins, which were coins of gold and silver, was about $1,200 then. So it's kind of hard to do the math of what maybe that was worth, but tens of thousands, 100,000, I don't know. It would also depend on the rarity, the condition they're in. But every time I find a jar, or maybe Elizabeth, didn't keep a good eye out that day, and I look inside, and I'm like, well, drat. And wouldn't that be a nice collection to turn back over to the foundation? Sure, you bet. And so, I guess we'll get to the site map. And, okay, as a general date for everything that's in the dig, we're pretty sure that the last people that lived here might have been the late 60s, early 60s, maybe late 50s. And the stuff I'm finding that I can't identify does date back to that era and all that. And as a rough guess, all this material I'm finding plausibly dates back 50 to maybe 100 years. And so, while that's not ancient, I guess we have to look at it like, as this stuff is kept in the collection, as it ages, it's going to get, more cool. But at the same time, I think it's pretty cool, because maybe we're starting with the latest occupants and hopefully work backwards. And I'd sure like to find this coming season, if y'all have it back, I'd like to find something we can directly link, to the Reynolds themselves. And so, all right. Kind of a blow-by-blow account of how I found all this stuff. Did I leave the notebook over here?
It's right here, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Deb.
Yes.
All right. And my orange folder. That's
Randy,
yes, ma'am.
since we've had so many floods here, and they did come up this way, what of this do you think may have come across it from the flood?
Well, I'm thinking pretty close to nil, because this stuff was, you see this tabletop, the 700 and some odd items I found, the vast majority came out of square footage, about maybe the size of 2 of these tables. And it's not like, excuse me, I dig and there's just a whole pile of stuff there. It all comes out in individual pieces. Excuse me, it's embedded in the grid walls and all that. And I have to be really careful with my shovel or my trowel. You know, I don't break anything, but you kind of get a feel when you get some resistance. So.
I even remember my grandparents burying their trash.
Didn't have, yep. Yep.
In the day. Young people don't, you know, like, why would they bury it? Well, there were a lot of trees on my grandparents' property, and so they wouldn't burn it, so I don't know if they, I'm assuming there was a pile that they buried the trash in.
We used to burn our trash back in the day, 55-gallon drums.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always fun to go take the trash out for mom and go burn it and put fire in it and feed the dogs. You know? After meeting with Elisa, the day that I met with her, I brought my metal detectors just so we could, you know, turn them on and just scan the grounds and get an idea of how much metal, you know, is in the yard. And we dug one little hole, and it was a bottle top or something like that. As we walked around just the front yard, those detectors were just singing all the time. Beep, 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 beep. Haven't even got to the metal detecting part, because you can see why I kind of had a pause with this stuff, and that can wait. But and we talked about you know, how we were going to approach this, and I asked that we don't you know, publicize it much, because I didn't want everybody's brother thinking that, you know, the Reynolds House was open season for anybody who wants the metal detector to start coming, you know, and digging holes and tearing up the property, and perhaps, you know, make it look like I did it too. So we kept it under pretty good wraps, which is, it's all out there now. I got to swear you on the secrecy. We're going to continue to dig, so you're going to hold your right hand, swear you're not going to tell, spit there, please. Don't need any pirates here. It's bad enough there's one on the property on risk. So, okay. Upon starting the investigation of the property a couple days after we met, I just walked around. And of course, as we walked around that day, we saw stuff just laying in the yard, washed out. This is cool. So I didn't want to, you know, come in and just start digging metal detecting holes. You know, I looked for spots where the dirt was already disturbed. Hey, the digging was done already, because this didn't get any easier. And there was a trench, a fresh trench out here that they dug for a water line. So I thought, well, that would be a good place to start. And also, I noticed that during my walk around, there was pieces of ceramic and stuff washing out of that dirt. So I just started doing visual surveys. And you know, sometimes I call you and say, well, it might have rained like heck today, but I'm going to go over and see what's washed out of the ground. So out of all the visual surveys, the stuff just laying out in the open after a rain, upon starting the investigation of the property, a non-intrusive visual survey of the grounds was performed throughout the season. The following list of artifacts were in plain sight after a rain, or partially buried. And during the months after the initial visual survey, more cultural material eroded out during rainstorms. Once again, safe digging, right? And I found 53 items. And if you'd like to look at this at my artifact catalog, after we talk or whatever, you can see a lot of stuff that I'm not going to mention. But just for example, just walking around the property, intact vintage perfume bottle, bone fragments, chicken bones, a vertebral bone, royal Dalton china pieces, blue enameled ceramics with floral patterns, a ceramic cup handle, a teacup handle, vintage electrical cable insulators, a stainless steel fork utensil, and one fork was damaged. I think it's by my place setting over there. And it just, there's 53 items, and then the marbles started appearing. I found one marble that day, and one of us said that here's the marble we lost out of our heads. So, yeah. At this point, I was thinking, at this time, I was thinking, I lost my marbles. I've taken this on. I'm going to be napping or sailing or something, right? So that's a review of what I found just on the ground. So, okay, my first day of official digging, I started on the water line there. I'm going to start there first because glass and ceramics were washing out of that. So, and I kept in mind that, they dug that for a reason. There's probably a pipe down there, but I looked at the frost line and all that, and I think I was safe to go down a foot or so without, breaking anything. How embarrassing that would be. And on that first hole, out here on the water line, I found a piece of coal, a machine nut, an encrusted iron screw with a nut, some ceramic, and 14 pieces of brick, which is just all over this yard. You can hardly dig a hole in this yard without finding a piece of brick. And a brown ceramic bowl top. So I got that done. And then with the aid of my partner over here, Randy Rhodes, he came over and we dug the next grid, and it overlapped the first one on the water line out here. And that day, Randy and I found and of course, I should be pointing at my handy dandy map here. And here's the water line here, and there's hole 1 and 2 right there. Randy and I found a thin lead rectangle thing, measured 2 inches by 1 inch. A lot of clear glass. There's just, in this main dig out here, I've reburied so much plate glass. I reburied a lot of coal and plate glass and things that is of no use or value, and I just started using that for fill again. And also in that grid, we found a blue enamel jar lip ceramic fragment. So got that done. So a day or 2 later, I returned over here, and the next place I wanted to look at was just outside the window here. There was a large tree that fell over in an ice storm a little over a year ago, which narrowly missed this beautifully reconstructed house. But there was this, when it toppled over, what trees do, they produce a huge root wad, and around trees, people sit around trees and they lose pocket chains, or they lose keys, or they lose this or that. So, and I knew the tree service was coming to take this tree out, and haul it off and all that. So I thought, well, I better get on that next. And once again, I'm not intruding the property, and the digging's already done. So let's see what's underneath that tree root. And I spent a couple weeks, let's go my notes here, during the initial survey of the property. It was noted a tree had toppled during a recent ice storm, narrowly missing the home. Its large root wad was exposed along with a 2-foot deep hole beneath the roots. And of course, shade trees attract human activity, and I spent many hours and days digging through the roots on that exposed root wad, looking for stuff. And the most prized thing that came out of that, and it's kind of apropos, right, was this axe head. That was cool. That popped out one day. And I found a section of threaded pipe and what looked to be an oil lamp wick cover, and wire nails and some fabric, and a bottle that was marked 5745, and some more porcelain and coal, and here's the clincher. I had the flu, and I was finished with the tree root, and the tree service came over to remove the tree, and when they picked it up and rolled it over, the root wad exposed a pistol! A pistol in the root wad! And I missed it. So a corroded pistol was discovered by the tree company while removing and cutting a hole in the tree away. And as per their policy, this company's policy that does the tree work, they have to call the police when they find a weapon, so they did that. So it was turned over to KPD due to their company policy concerning discovered weapons. And I did make several requests for the return of the pistol to no avail, but I think it pretty well went right into the crusher. And then I did find out later it was a BB pistol.
Yeah.
That would have
It
been.
wasn't of any,
Yeah, it would still have been fun to keep. But that's okay. It was just a victim service.
It's really not okay.
I know. It's gone. BB pistol. So after the tree root, I got that cleaned out, and I noticed during my walk around that, out here by the driveway, when you first pull in the driveway out back on the north side, there's a big old pile of dirt. And I asked Elisa if that belonged to the property or had that been hauled in as fill dirt for a project here. She said, no, that is from the property. And I said, it must be from the water line. So I took my sifting box over there, and I spent about a week sifting and came up with some stuff. pieces of ceramic and things like that, and nothing really all that hot. How many items were there? There were 29 items, mostly white ceramic shards and broken bottles. Did find a perfume lid. It's stuck in one of those, a glass perfume lid, and some colored ceramics, and a mussel shell, a piece of copper pipe. Well, I got about halfway down with the dirt pile, and the ADHD's kicking in. It's hot. And I thought about the smokehouse, because during the walk around we had noticed that there were pieces of mason jars just kind of back in that one corner. So I thought maybe that'd be a good place to dig. I'm kind of over the dirt pile. I know it's not going anywhere, so I'm going to change it up, and I'm going to take my my sifting box and my barrels and all my tools over there and see what's going on. Well, that move was a game changer, because we had stumbled across where they dug and hid their trash and got rid of it. Once again, they got rid of stuff. And so, while sitting in the dirt pile by the driveway for a week with some success, I moved to that area. A test hole produced enough culture material to warrant a full attention to this area. And a flood of artifacts came to light in the following weeks in this grid and the following grids. And obviously the area was a refuse area where occupants of the home discarded broken and no longer wanted items. So that was a real game changer. And starting on that day, I haven't moved anywhere else. And when I stopped working last October, it wasn't because this had played out here. Here's the smokehouse, and on the west side, this is where grids 5 through 11 are. And I've made a larger inset here that shows you, the smokehouse, and then where the grids lay and all that, ending with grid number 11. And the average depth of all these grids is about 30 inches. Some were 32 inches before they played out, and some were 28, so around 30 inches. And I get that all cleaned out, and sometimes I finish the grid, or I put my boards back over the hole and put my tarp on and go home for the day or whatever. But I've spent the rest of the time, and I'm going to pick back up out there, because once again I didn't stop digging there because it ran out, but it was just time to go. But it's rare you can say that you're going to dig a hole and guarantee there's something in it, but I got to find the outer boundaries of that, because it's still producing. But on that day, out of that grid, I recovered 32 items, including the granny glasses. That was cool, on the first grid by the smokehouse. And let's see here. And of course the combs were fun to find also. Then I continued on with grid 5, and I found 25 items in that, and intact jars, a lot of bottles, a lot of perfume bottles and things of that nature, and a couple of whiskey bottles here. Somebody imbibed. Here's an old Whistle soda bottle. Of course, this is the largest bottle right here, and I kind of try to make them progressively smaller, with all the way down to the end here. Now that's a tiny bottle right there. So it's either a collector's. I've seen examples of these being collector's bottles. I've also seen examples where these were medicinal ampules for medicine, and this one appears to have been melted, but this one is intact, and it still has whatever was in it has turned to powder. Anybody care to try? We need to figure out what the heck this is. But
everybody gets it once.
It's such a tiny bottle, and found a. Okay, like I said, this is just a representation of everything I found. I've got a lot of duplicates, but I've got about 12 of these little buggers right here, and they appear to be some sort of cosmetic jar, because this one, I don't want to show it to you, I'll dump it on the table, it still has rouge or something, and it's about half full of some sort of a red powder. It is screw tight, but someone like this brand of cosmetics, if that's what it is. And a medicinal bottle with,
some sort of a powder clinging to the side. It's not like you can't shake or anything, but it's all discolored. I take the top shut.
And so that went on to, let's see, grid 5, no, I discovered that. Grid 6, 48 items came out of that hole, out of that grid. Not that grid, sounds good, not hole, the grid. A lot of white ceramics, 24 pieces. 4 more marbles came out of grid 6. A canning jar lid, and like I said, you guys can look through this and see everything that was found in each grid. And grid 7, big day there, 89 items came out, probably more like a good 3 days actually. To get that much stuff, I'm sure it took me more than a couple, 2 or 3 days. A lot of it was unmarked white ceramic shards, and some had patterns. And anything else stand out? These mason jars. Have you guys seen these? They're kind of bluish color. I see these in your windows, Deb. Sometimes where's Deb go?
She's in the kitchen.
Oh, okay. But these, the reason the tint is blue is these were made from sand that is up around Lake Michigan, and that's the type of glass that sand produces. So that's kind of nifty. And grade 7 continue this furniture wheel casters, and I'll kind of go through each grouping too. Grid 8, 46 items came out. Just some more of the children's toys, more marbles, of course. The marbles gave them up slowly. And, you know, when I work at the smokehouse, you know, it gets pretty hot out there, but if I get over here early enough, the smokehouse casts enough shade that by the time I'm pretty much over it and spent, you know, I start losing my shade, but the smokehouse gives me a lot of good shade, and I think also it must have given the children good shade also, because that's where I found all these marbles, you know. They're out there by the trash pile shooting marbles, you know, because they were dispersed throughout the dig. They weren't just thrown in all together. So, you know, when we were kids and we played marbles, you'd lose usually your favorite marble, either by losing or just losing it, period, right? But the marbles are always fun to find. We've done lost our marbles. Grid 8 produced 46 items of just one of the plastic toys, a little car over there, and some more of the bones, sustenance and all that. Grid 9 produced 52 items. Once again, a lot of white ceramics. I tell you, these pioneers were clumsy people. I found this to be true up in Hannibal, also Mark Twain's boyhood home. I found so much broken ceramic that we had a theory as to why that happened up there. But in my notes here, I've got all the patent numbers and everything I found and the numbers and all that. So, and I have a copy of, as you know, for you all too, and I'm holding on to it to make additions. To make additions this summer. And kind of clean yourself a little better than mine. Let's see, grid 9. Grid 10, 178 items. Holy moly, yeah, it took quite a while. And once again, just a variety of stuff. It's like the Walmart of artifacts. You know, you don't know what's going to come across that screen. If they're going to come, you know, look over my shoulder while I'm doing this, or lift some of those heavy buckets of dirt, you know, you might talk to me. So, but yeah, 178 items came out of grid 10.
Where was that grid?
Right by the smokehouse, once again. I'm still stuck at that dang smokehouse. I'm glad to be there. Yeah.
It's all in give a like foot by foot range of how big the total area is.
That total area is right around 8 feet by 12 or so, maybe about the same.
Everything came from that 8 by 12 foot area on the yard. So
Besides, yeah,
not even touched.
yeah.
So far percentage.
And I'll just pick back up there too. I'm just going to keep expanding west with it a little bit and see where it poops out, and then keep working that way, and then going around the corner of the smokehouse, and I left about a 2.5 foot strip of dirt intact between the smokehouse and the grid, because I was fearing that I was gonna undermine the smokehouse, I was gonna show up for work one morning and the whole dang thing collapsed, you know? And you'll see me hopping a train out here. But it's hard to tell what's in between my grids and that barrier that I've left with the smokehouse. There was also a lot of erosion underneath the smokehouse, which I was concerned about anyway, because it does have a few cracks in it that were there when I started. And the way that thing sits on that hillside, I'm concerned one good shake or earthquake and that thing's gonna come
It's
down.
lasted this long.
You got that right. But I didn't do it. I'll stick to that to the end. And then grade 10 continues, it's just several pages. An assortment of cultural material from past residents. And 118 items came on my last grid. And once again, just a mix of stuff. A lot of it I've mentioned already, some I haven't, but once again, I'll lay this on the table if you guys want to look through it. And so, the best way I could think to present this all to you was just put everything in some sort of a group. So we start over here, of course. Before I left yesterday, you know, I put a little touch on. I had pieces of coal, so I did the JRH thing and all that. And here we have personal items. This is kind of Art Deco-ish. It's a lipstick holder / tube, and this is in pieces. And I reassembled as best I can, but I don't want to drop it. You know, I can still pull it apart and all that, but it's pretty neat. So, and once again shows, you know, maybe it does, some pieces in here do date back, you know, close to 100 years. You know, the Art Deco years of what, 1920 to 1940, mostly popular, you know, in the 20s. But that's pretty darn fancy right there. And a tube of Avon with the lead top on it, of course. So, so maybe the 40s or so. A lot of buttons. Buttons are fun to find. And of course, the granny glasses and a Zippo lighter, the inside of a Zippo lighter. And you know, the Zippo company, even if I would send this to the Zippo company, they would send me a brand new lighter. They still replace lighters. If you can send them the mechanism, they will replace it, but they can't have it. And I didn't know what this was, so I found one up in Hannibal at Mark Twain's Boyhood Home. This is a harmonica reed. Let's talk about personal touch, you know. And let's see here, a tax token and an old spark plug. I don't have the date on there. It's probably in my catalog there. A men's disposable razor case. You know, it says Silver Star Duridium Whiz Pack, double edge blade dispenser. Yeah. Whiz Pack. And the little buckles are cool. I like to find buckles. Maybe you guys can help me with this. I'm calling this a hair barrette, but I don't know. It bends, these prongs bend real easy as if it could be maybe an old hair clip. I just don't know.
I think
What do you think, John?
that's an adjuster. Oh, actually.
Have you found? John's a big guy.
Oh, wait. It looked like a suspender adjuster. Like,
Yeah.
rotate. I don't know. I don't think of
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah, I do know it's not a suspender buckle, but
No.
I'm just calling it a hair barrette for now. And a bullet. 30-06. And let's see. At least we know it didn't go with the pistol. You know, with the pistol. Yeah. And so that's the personal items. And of course, once again, the combs are cool. The tool collection. Here's the business end of a hoe for their garden. You know, that was fun to find. You know. And of course, the axe head. And knock the bottles off. And that's the remnants of a knife. The blade's pretty much gone, but there you can see the handle. And there's what's left is someone's old pocket knife. You know, right there. Once again, personal items, the stuff they use, that's the coolest stuff. And of course, the things they use for survival also. And this is fun. You know, I looked at different examples. The best I can tell this is from a draft horse, a working horse. You know, up in Hannibal, I found a good old Missouri mule shoe in the dig up there, and that was fun. But they're much more oval shaped, and this just seemed to fit into a draft horse. How that ended up in there, I don't know. And who knows, maybe things like this could have been around the property for a long time. Maybe this dates back to the Reynolds era, who knows, and maybe they kept it around, they threw it in the bin at a later date, you know, but there's no way to prove that or anything, but we can think about this stuff, and maybe sometimes think about it too much. The home hardware, this was cool. I guess this might be off the closet. This just doesn't look, you know, large enough to maybe be a doorknob, but this locking mechanism, this door lock, was interesting. That was cool, because evidently that its use wore out, so perhaps this is one of the original, you know, locks, whether it's, you know, from an interior door or an exterior door or whatever, I don't know, but there's a lock mechanism. And let's see here. I think these are drawer pulls, you know, for a dresser. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought that was pretty cool. And this would probably clean up really sweet, but once again, you know, we can always clean these things, but in its original state, that's a good place to be, you know, at least for right now. But a couple weeks later, I found its match. That was kind of fun.
Well, people update it often, you know, something goes out of fashion, they get new pulls for all sorts of
Yes.
old bureaus and stuff.
Yes. And maybe for a screen door, I don't know, kind of looks like a handle. I can't tell you for sure. And a hasp here, and a hinge, and one of a few square nails, you know, hand hammered, hand produced, you know, square nails. And I found a ton of just regular fasteners, you know, machine nails. I could line them up all the way down the table, but I just brought these for an example. And it's working out. Let's see, it's back up here. I've talked to some of you about this bowl, and I've been reconstructing a lot of this stuff. And I'm calling this my hybrid bowl here. Don't laugh at me. But I found these original pieces here, and that was it. And then all these other pieces are from around the dig. And none of them really, they didn't fit together. I couldn't piece them together, so.
Same grid, same grid.
Yeah, the same area, yes, the same area. So I just started taking random pieces I couldn't fit to nothing else. I just started reconstructing where I thought this, what I'm calling a bread bowl, might look like. And then I kind of started losing my symmetry, so I backed off. And it's with shaky coffee hands and all that, and working in the morning. It probably took me about a month of doing this every day until I was just totally over it and walked away from it. So there's the hybrid bread bowl. I put a piece of mother of pearl in there also. It was just fun. And some depression glass. There's a little lid and there's plates. And this was kind of Art Deco-ish.
I like that. You know what I think that might be? A child's candy container.
Yes.
You used to have a little tiny,
Okay.
non-Perel sized candies in it. And that may at one time have a lid and bell, because it resembles to me a railroad lantern.
It does kind of look like a lantern, especially with the framing.
That as opposed to a salt cellar.
And that's what's wonderful about having other eyes on your stuff, because you see, they can tell you stuff, what they see also. And I guess this might have been a little soap dish.
Sorry.
It was in pieces, that's all right. I'm surprised mine
How
hasn't.
that happened.
I'm surprised mine hasn't gone up. I guess this might have been a soap dish. This was made by, well, it has a hallmark on it. It says 1885, but I'm not buying that it was made in 1885. That's probably some mold number or whatever. I couldn't find any other examples of it. But, let's see here. I'm calling these clock parts. There's like a cog, and I'm doing that because laying near this cog, I found this mainspring. So perhaps that's part of a clock, and there's other pieces here. And of course, the bones. I've got a lot of bones still in storage and all that.
Not in human bones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Nice, yeah. They hauled me out of here for concealing a corpse. And of all the shoe parts I found, I thought this was the coolest. It's got a white trim. It's got a white trim to it, you know, and you can see the little lace holes and all that. It's fancy. And the soles and all that. And of course, the hosiery. As you move around, just the ceramic, the color of ceramic, more reconstruction. This is kind of a cool pattern on this, I think. Where as that goes, it's kind of neat. And this was fun also. This reconstructed pretty darn well. And perhaps I'll find some more pieces of this tea and or coffee cup, but there's no markings on it, but it sure has some nice floral patterns to it. And of course the utensils and the partial spoon and the bones. And what appears to be an old butcher knife and a church key type model. And children's marbles and things of that nature. So,
Randy, you have it's like about 15 minutes till 7.
Very good.
I'm gonna leave time for people to
Yes.
ask their questions if they have them, but I have a question before you get to that part, because you've been walking.
I'm pretty much
You know,
done
what
with
is
this.
your favorite thing that you found so
That was,
far?
you're reading my mind. I wanted to know
What I
what
found
what
here?
you got the most excited about.
I think the granny glasses. Yeah. It's hard to compare apples and oranges, you know, but the hosiery. No. Not really.
It's amazing it survived.
I know, the hosiery just kept coming out of the side. I've still got a bag of that, and I'm gonna count for it. I think the glasses, how about you?
Glasses are my favorite.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
There was a good sign on that first grid by the smokehouse, and about a half hour into it,
Yep.
when the glasses were sticking out of the wall of the hole, I was like, what the heck is that? You know, and I dug a little bit more, and pulled, and got it out. I was like, well, I'll be dang. I have found a spot, so it appears. Let's see.
I'm impressed with your hybrid bowl. I am seriously impressed with it.
Thank you. But I ate so much glue while I was doing that.
Do you eat it or smell it?
No, it was Elmer's. I'm just this way natural. Too much dieting. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Or the horseshoe.
How about
Horseshoe's pretty impressive.
What do you think, Miss Charlotte?
I do think
Do you
it's
think it's
I do think it's a draft horse.
Think it's a draft
Yeah,
horse?
yeah.
Size and the weight of it.
should know horses.
Yes.
I like the variety of bottles you have.
Yes.
I mean, to me, that's just, that one that we talked about is maybe an ink bottle that you put the perfume top in.
Yes.
Whiskey bottles, I mean, it's just so cool. Look at that sort of candy jar from the end, it's got a grid on it, that one. I've never seen
Yes.
I've never seen anything like
My
that.
mom has one like that, and it has a label on it, it's coffee.
How you holding up?
I'm fine, but I have got to go let my dogs out.
You better go.
I have a walker at noon, but
If I didn't have handlers, I would be gone myself. I told Randy I'd put this on YouTube for him.
President of the corporation.
I'm gonna slip out. Will you tell him why I left?
I will, I'll tell him. Good to see you.
Yes, that's a miniature.
You call me up, dear.
I'm going.
Here's a miniature.
We'll go look at that archive stuff.
Yeah, what? I'll have to look at my log. Yeah, if it has numbers, I at least tried, yeah. Okay. I probably at least have an error. We'll have to look and see.
The script on the jars changed.
Yes, and that's what I went by. Okay. Yes. Any more comments or questions?
I can't whistle, I don't know how to whistle, I'm sorry. Does anyone, if we could do questions now, if you have individual questions, yeah. Mom, this is my mom.
It's a plan. Very proud of my daughter and everyone that's worked with her on this. Were there ever other structures on this property, like a stable Who's coming to me now, not stable house, but, you know, back in the day, marriage house, thank you.
I don't know about that, but Cletus is here tonight.
Cletus is here.
I invited Cletus because roughly 1993, he deeded the backyard area over to the foundation. And we walked.
A different foundation, historical association in Greater Cape area, yeah.
Okay, and we took a walk to the backyard a while ago because I want to know where those structures were because I don't want to be out there finding stuff and think it belongs to the home. And with the proximity of the smokehouse and how easy it was for them just to walk at the back door and clear their trash, I think without a doubt, I can say this belonged to this house because, you know, all this stuff is on their property. But as far as the carriage house, I don't know, I've seen it on the end of it.
Didn't, in the,
Do you know? Just please.
do you remember if there were any other buildings here?
You can't hear very well, like.
I can't talk very well.
Yeah.
Do you remember if there were any other buildings here when you sold it? Still standing?
I own 3 across
You
the
own 3
street.
across the street.
And there was an old building like
Slade house is over. The other house is that way.
Yeah.
There was other houses that way.
Oh, okay. So when we have the records from the archives, they actually don't show anything else at that time. However, we do know that by the smokehouse, there are 2 troughs. So one's really broken up and then the other one is intact. And there's actually the hitching post. And then the stairs are kind of down the hill, or we moved them, we need to move them back by the hitching post. So we do know in the area where you were working that there were horses hitched there. So when they did the National Register nomination in the 90s, all that they accounted for on the property were the house and the smokehouse at that time. So,
It's possible that because they were fairly well off, they may have gotten their
Well,
horses from a livery stable or something.
and also this property was part of a larger area, which Denise knows a lot more about, but, and I did want to mention, that the people who actually built this house were slaves. We might even find some artifacts, of them. This whole area was part of a larger, kind of plantation area properties, in Cape Girardeau. But in any of the records we've found so far, we haven't seen any other structures.
Yeah, what do sandboard maps look like?
So they don't go, yeah,
Really?
we've looked back as far as we
Yeah.
could on them. The house kind of changes a little bit, you know, as they tend to do.
Yeah, probably.
But the sandboard map doesn't show any other, major buildings on the property.
Question, I've read a little bit about archaeology. In some places, they said that the treasure pit was where the outhouse was. People
Yes.
threw the stuff down
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and we found,
We have not, obviously, we haven't even moved from this one spot yet.
Stall right here. Now, when I did hole 4 out there, after I did the tree root, before I got to the dirt pile, I saw a depression in the ground. I thought, yeah, I'll give it a shot there. And I pulled out this, 3 or 4 pieces of ceramic and stuff. Now I continued on to the dirt pile to start that sifting over there. But yeah, that's usually a veritable place for things that have been lost or thrown away or stolen or hidden. And that really involves some digging. I mean, you see these guys on YouTube that do it. I mean, they're standing at the bottom looking up, and you might call somebody else. But yeah, a trove, those things are usually a trove. The Caribbean is a trove, you just never know.
We haven't,
It's good as compost.
yeah.
Who else has got a question I can't answer?
can I ask another question? I've been, a little bit, I have never seen so much broken glass in the ground here.
Yeah.
Is there a reason? I mean, you can't, it's just broken glass,
I reburied so much broken plate glass. I just put it back in the ground just at the end of the day.
I mean, maybe Southeast Missourians were really clumsy. Maybe there's an entire, I don't know that. I know growing up where I did in central Illinois, and I tended to dig out in the woods, and I found like a refuse pile out there too. yeah, it goes back.
A lot of it's construction too, or like just various stages of
Populated
construction.
areas, you know, as Cape Girardeau as we know it now looked very different then, right? But we have this great downtown historic area. There were lots of people that lived and worked down here. You know, you have the factories and everything here. You have the Mississippi River, so you had more river traffic. So lots of people in and around and just living life. And I do know that there were some people here that remember this property in the 70s, and there were some parties here, so they probably threw a lot of glass out there too.
You said it was kind of, had a reputation, and it's like.
Yes, it is a
This
checkered
happened. Yes.
A party house?
No, a little more partying than
There are lots of places in Cape Girardeau that were houses.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
This is part of the history. Yeah.
What's more income for the foundation, sir?
Well,
I-
we
I mean,
have
they
to
probably-
remember that everything used to be contained in glass.
Yeah.
Aluminum
And
there.
there's no plastic.
And, yeah, and plastic, and so glass was
Think
everywhere.
about how much you drop daily. I'm kind of clumsy, but I don't know the answer to your question.
And a lot of times the stuff they broke, you know, a lot of stuff the times they broke, when they broke stuff, they would break it more to make the
Yep.
pit.
Yeah.
That's one thought I have, you know, I've read that.
Yeah.
It accumulates the trash pile, and then sometimes
Yeah, you just
construction
break it
will
up,
take
yeah.
and break it up even more and disperse
Yeah.
it, so.
Yeah,
And then you'll see stuff wash out.
yeah. So it's gonna be interesting to see, what else is revealed in grid number 12. You know, and we'll see how that goes, and like I said, I'll just keep expanding it when it plays out. And what I wanted to, you mentioned the hitching post, I want to go to the hitching post and go out maybe a couple, 2 or 3 feet around it and dig down and see if there's some tackle there, or, you know, stuff that might have been dropped, you know, or.
Yeah.
And I saw a picture of the Reynolds House, I don't know what year it was, a little black and white photo. But in the photo, it showed the smokehouse, but the water troughs weren't there.
No,
So I don't know when those were put in,
moved around.
or moved around perhaps. But that was an interesting question about a carriage house, because we know they had hitching posts, so like you said, maybe they rented their horses.
The Glen House has a carriage house out back, but they didn't keep their horses there, they kept their horses up on the other street.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking, maybe they did that here as well, there was a stable.
Yeah. And Mr. Dean that built this house, built the Glen House.
Glen House.
And
And Mr. Lansman, I didn't jot down all the historic structures. What other historic structures did Mr. Lansman build?
They're all over.
All over. Yeah.
St. James AME Church, several houses,
Across from St.
there's little cottages all over.
Complex, the old St. Vincent Seminary, St. Vincent's Church.
Right.
There's quite a list, and I didn't
Bunch
write
of
it all
small
down.
houses.
Well, St. Mary's too, I
And
believe.
he was in on that,
Yeah.
yeah. But a bunch of small houses.
The rumor was that he didn't pay his laborers, but it was kind of a barter system that they were able to construct,
Yeah.
houses.
Weren't they slaves?
Well, Lansman had some, but he also had a lot of German laborers too.
If you all ever get a chance to read the niece's essay about a slave auction here in Cape Girardeau, I reread it again the other night. That's just amazing.
We need to get
How
published.
it involves a big
Yeah.
slave sale and the disposition of the slaves that were used here.
And James Reynolds was one of the purchasers of that.
But that's an amazing piece of work.
Well, are you
Yeah,
ready to
just
come, or?
great.
I just wanna say a couple things.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
One, thank you for being here again. The house is,
Sorry, you're popular.
tell him he interrupted me talking.
I will.
Her husband, Dr. Steve Hoffman, a lot of you know, and he is also on our board here at Reynolds House, so I'm gonna give him an out on that one. So the James Reynolds House is available for rent. We have a larger arching goal of being a part of kind of a movement here in town to help tell the history of Southeast Missouri. You'll notice there's nothing on the walls. That idea is to eventually have gallery-style exhibits here that would showcase history of the region, not just Cape Girardeau. So our first exhibit will probably be something about the Reynolds family and the people interconnected with them. But then we also want to be able to showcase other properties in Southeast Missouri that might not have the audience that we do have here in Cape Girardeau. That's something to remember. You know, we are the regional hub, so people come here all the time, and so showcasing some of those smaller properties in smaller communities throughout Southeast Missouri. We are going to have another event coming up in the spring, which is going to be a family-oriented event on the grounds. The house will be open though that day, but the idea is to just kind of be open, have music. We'll have a couple of food trucks here to just bring people in. And then every donation that comes to the house goes to work that we are doing here. Obviously the home has been rehabbed, but we do have ongoing projects that occur, and then we also need to do some work in the lawn. And I know everybody likes to know where their donations go to. So the next big project is the lawn. We have to take dirt, we have to add dirt, we need to level it, we need to pave our drive so that it is more accessible as well. And so that's our next really big project. And then we also will work to making some of these visions come alive with these projects, and just being that sort of, for lack of a better term, vehicle, being that resource in the community that can showcase other properties. So again, thank you for being here for our first public event that we had. And then, Randy, did you want to say anything else?
Hey, thanks for coming and all this. And hundreds of hours of work, and it certainly, it's already been worthwhile, but it's been nice to share all this stuff with you. And if you enjoy this stuff, half as much as I do, I think you might have enjoyed it. But
Thanks for digging.
thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you.